Just want to kick it off by thanking our players first. With change in staff, schedule, all of that, I thought our guys handled it really well. I think the biggest thing was when you have adversity like this and there's a lot of losing towards the end of the season, I was blown away by our guys' ability to stick together. They practice with energy, and I think that's rare, but it speaks volumes on their character, how much they love the game, and the buy-in that they have for the direction that we're going. So I want to start off by thanking them. And then our coaches, really starting with Flus, to keep everything together. The one thing that was really cool to see just going through the team meetings through the year is just how authentic he was from a football perspective, getting guys locked in through adversity, really having the 24-hour rule, flipping the page to the next one and just attacking it week by week. Was really proud on how he did throughout the season. Then my staff, as well as the entire organization, the effort that goes into going through a season, especially our first one, I thought they did a really good job. I thought my staff was relentless at trying to bring in talent throughout the process, and they did a nice job. And then to the fans, I was blown away this season at the stadium, around town, at restaurants, with the amount of understanding that they know with where this organization is and where it's headed. I appreciate their patience. I know they've been waiting a long time to sustain success for a long period of time. But I thought it was really cool to just meet a lot of people that understood where we were going and what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. As we reflect on the season, I think when I started in the very beginning, I talked about a mentor of mine asking, what does success look like if you took wins and losses and you put that to the side for a second? And I did that, and it was really about the foundation that we built this year. I was excited about that. I was excited about the progress that we made. I think two things can be true, too. I think you can be disappointed in the losses, right? That's not what we're here to do. It hurts. I joked earlier, it feels like part of your football soul gets ripped out when you got to do it over and over and over again. But the resilience that this organization showed was outstanding. In our all-staff meeting, I handed out this in the very beginning of the season. It was just a building block that in the shape of a Lego, and I talked about the entire organization doing what it takes to stick together. Because I knew how important it was to build a foundation that was rock solid. It wasn't on something that was shaky, that would fracture. And that really, everyone bought into that, and I was excited about that. I know that we're in a healthier situation now than we were before, and we're excited about where we're going. Now, what does a foundation look like? I've heard that question in here a lot throughout the season. That's discipline. I thought I think we were one of the least penalized teams in the league. The bond I talked about in the locker room, sticking together. As a GM and a head coach, you worry about, through adversity, the locker room starting to fracture, people being selfish. And that was never the case. There was no finger pointing. The guys bought in, that had fun with each other. Experience. We led the league in rookie snaps by almost 1,000. That's going to pay off for us in the long run. Those guys, if they're starters, the game's going to slow down for them. If they end up being rotational players or backup, when their number's called, they're going to have game experience and be able to be successful through that. Toughness, that stood out to me. I can't tell you how many coaches from the teams that we played called the next morning or GMs and said, you can feel your guys on tape. You can feel that the way that they play, they play it the right way. Keep doing what you're doing. You're on the right path. And then, obviously, I know a lot of questions just about the quarterback. I thought Justin did a good job. I thought we changed a lot. We adapted. We tried to put him in a position to be successful. He showed the ability to be a playmaker, be impactful. He can change games quickly. Does he have room to grow? He does. He has to get better as a passer, and I'm excited to see him take those steps as we move forward. I was proud of the player acquisition, talk about relentlessness. Free agent guys came in, they contributed, and even some of the stuff under the surface. A guy like, we spent time with Riley Reef yesterday. That guy did more than a lot of people think for that O-line room and the mentality. I think I talked about when I first got here. I wasn't fired up on how we protected the quarterback in terms of getting him off the ground and that attitude and that physicality. He's the reason why we ran the ball so well. We finished. We had an attitude. We had an identity. And that's a lot because of guys like him. The draft, I thought a lot of those guys contributed. They're wired the right way. Some had success early and sustained it for the whole season. Some have a ways to go, but they're wired the right way, and they're going to help us moving forward. Where do we go from here? And that's really elevate off this foundation that we built. We start with the after-action reports. I believe in that. We're going to get together, talk about what we did well, what we didn't do well, attack our weaknesses, and continue to do what we did well over again. Player feedback. Coach and I met from 7 a.m. yesterday to 2 o'clock and met with every single player on our roster. And we spent a lot of time, and our coaches, our position coaches, spent time talking about how guys have to get better for next season. But we wanted feedback on where we have to be better as well. Our process, our scheduling, anything from travel, cafeteria, communication, all of that stuff. We wanted to know where we came up short so that we can support them better and that they're in a position to be successful. And then we're going to identify needs. What do we need? Where are the holes in the roster? And then we're going to attack them with the same relentlessness that we did this past season. Obviously, we have a lot more resources, so I'm excited to do that. But we got to stay sound in free agency. I know everyone's talking about how much money we have, and we're just going to go crazy. We're going to be sound so that we get the right players in here and we get good value. And attack the draft, always keeping value in mind. That's going to stay the same. It's not going to change just because we have, the number 1 overall pick. So I know Coach and I are excited. Everyone should be excited about the direction we're about to go. I'll open up to questions.
Ryan, given your vision and given all the resources that you just mentioned that you have, what can you accomplish this offseason, and realistically, how much can you get done?
Yeah. I don't know if I can answer that specifically, but I can tell you that we have flexibility. We have flexibility where if there's opportunities where we can, turn that into a lot of players that come in to help us, we can do that. If it's staying put or really being selective with certain people, we can do that as well. So I know our expectation is that we move the needle to be more successful. We can win some of these close games and bring in guys that can impact this football team.
Right. On that note, on Dan's question, how pivotal is this opportunity this offseason? Is this what you've been waiting for the past year, as you've been doing cleanup and tear down, and now you have the chance to really do what you want?
I'd say the approach is the same. We're going to evaluate the players. We're going to put them in certain value buckets, and then we're going to attack it and get as many good players in here as possible. I don't think, I think you make a mistake and say this is it. No, we're going to approach it the same and be consistent so that we make sound decisions.
Ryan, do you plan on Justin Fields being your starting quarterback next year?
Yeah, we had good conversations. I'm excited for the direction he's going, and as I mentioned before, he knows where he has to improve. I think you mentioned that the other day. So we're excited about his development and where he goes next. He showed ability to be impactful with his legs. There's flashes with his arm. Now if we can put that together, I think we have something really good.
Because you have the first pick, there are people that sit there and go, a quarterback might be available there. You're saying Justin's your guy.
Well, we're going to do the same as we've always done. We're going to evaluate the draft class, and I would say this, I'd have to be absolutely blown away to make that type of decision.
Ryan, specifically, do you want to see Justin Fields get better as a passer?
Yeah, just as a passer, just for things to slow down mentally and then be able to react and anticipate quicker. Obviously, with that, we also have to continue to build around him so that he can do that consistently as well.
What did you learn about him, just watching him kind of develop as that leader of this offense?
Yeah, resilient. A guy that has ownership, he has growth mindset, the amount of time that he put in with the coaches to continue to get better. The guy is hungry to be successful in this league.
What was your evaluation of your early evaluation of the free agent class?
Yeah, I was excited just spending time with those guys. Justin Jones, I thought, did a really good job. I thought he was a consistent playmaker through the season. With that front, I know there's a lot of questions on production in the pass game with sacks. I think that's a group that's got to work, just like O-line, you got to work together. It's not just one player. So, again, I'm excited to see him take the next step next year. But in terms of a steady piece that I thought made plays throughout the season, I thought he did that.
Ryan, obviously, Justin had a lot to prove coming into this year, and you said you're excited to see where he's going. Was there a moment for you when you said, "Oh wow, this is something where now I am really excited"? Was there a specific moment that started that for you?
Yeah, well, it was like mid-season when he really started to go off with his legs, create explosive plays. You know, you think of plays like the shot to Mooney, the shot to Pettis in the corner of the end zone. I think that was Washington. Those deep ball throws that we know he can make. Now it's just closing in the gap and being consistent with it. And again, I know the beautiful thing about football is we can't point at one. You can never point at one person and be like, it's his fault. No, it's a collective where everything's got to work together. So I know, and we know, if we continue to grow this football team, bring in a lot of really good players, that everyone's going to get better collectively.
Ryan,
In extension to that, when you have the top-ranked rushing offense in the NFL, the 32nd ranked passing offense, what, through your lens, do you see in terms of that and the need to rectify that or find more balance?
Yeah, I think a little bit too. I think it's like chemistry, just working with the group around him. I noticed like through the season, the guys that he had the most time with in the off season, that transferred into the season. I think that's why Cole had a hell of a year. So that chemistry, building that chemistry is big, and then just letting the game slow down to him. Everything's new. This offense was new and you've seen everything for the first time. So time on task, I think, is going to help.
Ryan, what's your evaluation of Claypool? We had 14 catches in 7 games. I think a lot of people are joining him. Weaker receiving core. A lot of people thought he would slow down a lot more than that.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, I think that's the difference between like trades in baseball and basketball. It's like plug and play. There's an entire off season and half of a season of installs and all the things that you need to do collectively to play and execute offensive play. On top of that, it was a little bit choppy with Justin getting dinged up. He got dinged up. So it was a little bit choppy of a start. I told Chase, and we had a really good conversation, I'm not blinking at that one at all. I think he's going to help us moving forward, and I'm excited about it.
Ryan, everyone understands what you were doing this year. I think everybody around the league understands it with dead cap space,
Yep.
floating the roster. Did you expect to win more football games, though?
I think you always do, right? And I think some of those close games that we talked about, you know, that can go one way or the other, I was hoping to win those. But that wasn't the case. So I know that this team's got a long way to go. And, you know, coming in, that was an understanding that there is a long way to go. So, yeah, like I told you, losing, it hurts. You always expect to win more than 3 games. That's why, like, I got home and one of my buddies from the neighborhood drove by. I was like, "Hey, congratulations for the first overall pick." I'm still not in that mindset right now. It hurts, you know. It hurts to be in that position. Obviously, the opportunities and things that will come from that, I hope that helps us. But yeah, you're always expecting to win. You don't want to be in this position.
Back to Claypool
line.
for a second. When you traded for him, obviously what you gave up for him, you expect him to be a part of your organization for a while. And you said you don't blink at all at the lack of production the last couple of months. So when you acquire him, knowing that he'd be coming up for an extension this offseason, this doesn't change your opinion at all? You're of the same mindset you were when you acquired him?
I think, you know, if with health, with Justin being out for a little bit, your expectation, I told him, like, yeah, I wish he came in, he had 1,000 yards, and we're going, but it didn't happen that way. But do I believe in the talent and what he can bring to this team? I do. And I still think we're going to get that. In terms of the contract stuff, to me, we just got to take the next step and see how he gets implemented and how he does in this offseason. He's going to spend a lot of time with Justin as well as the other receivers and build that chemistry, and we'll be able to evaluate that even clearer next year.
With
with
your
the eye of
offensive
a-
line,
Top of the
Ryan,
draft
with your,
board right now.
sitting at the top of the draft board, you said if the quarterback, you'd have to be completely blown away to do that. But any other position, and possibly being able to trade back from there, what kind of leverage do you view yourself in right now, knowing the offers you could field this year and potentially garnering more draft capital?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I said about flexibility. I think we can evaluate the talent there. We can see what player presents himself in that position to help us. And then we can also look at the scenarios. You know, if the phones go off and then there's certain situations where we think that can help us, then we'll go down that avenue too. So I think we have really good flexibility to help this team, regardless if it's making the pick there or moving back a little bit or moving back a lot. We'll be open-minded about everything.
With the eye of a former offensive lineman, how do you evaluate the production, the effort, the play you got from your O-line this season?
Yeah, I thought, you know, I'll start the positives, the run game stuff was outstanding. I thought they did a good job. I thought I had talked about earlier about putting guys in position to succeed. I thought Tevin was successful moving a guard. That was fun to see him go through that. But as a unit, I thought the run game was really good. But we have to get better in pass pro. They all know that, and they're up for the challenge. And we got to continue, for those that aren't here, we got to continue to bring in players that can help us do that.
And going off that, who do you think you found on the offensive line that are starters going forward? Who do you think you need upgrades?
Yeah, so we're working through that. We're going to get with, the offensive coaches and kind of go through the rankings and talk about future. I'll start. I was proud of Braxton. He's got a long ways to go to reach his ceiling. But for his path, and if you look at not many people look at the schedule for a player who, goes into the offseason, Senior Bowl, Combine, comes in as a 5th-round pick, battles through camp, gets a spot, and then plays every single snap through the season. That's an accomplishment right there. That tells me he's wired right. He's got mental toughness, rode the ups and downs. So I'm hoping that he continues to work on his body, his technique, and that's someone that we can play with and be successful with for a while.
Right. You said you were a little uncomfortable getting congratulations for getting the number 1 pick, but were you watching and hoping for Houston that day? How did it all go down?
I knew this. Yeah, I knew the scenario, but I had no. After the game, that it was on a TV, I think upstairs, or that they switched to it when I left the box. But at that point, I just wanted to spend time with the players after the game and tell them how much I appreciate everything that they put into the season.
We're talking a lot about Justin for obvious reasons, but what are the other players that you have in-house now that you sort of identify as potential blue-chip guys that will be a part of the championship ascent?
Yeah, the one that stands out to me this year I was just proud of, and I spent time with him talking about it, but I thought Cole did a really good job. I thought he elevated his game from the film that I watched last year to what he was this year. So that's exciting. That's one that comes to mind right now.
Ryan, when you mentioned addressing holes on the roster, it's hard to fix everything when you're 3-14. What do you look at as the priority? What's the thing that you say this is the number 1 problem we need to fix?
It's hard to identify that right now, but I always go back to the premium positions. We're always going to look at pass rushers. We're going to look at offensive linemen, corners. So that's where we're always going to start and see if can we play winning football with those premium positions, and then we move from there.
Is that the order? That's usually the order for a team is quarterback, pass rusher,
Yep.
left tackle, stuff like that. So pass rusher, if you're good with Justin, then pass rusher is the number 1 thing you need.
It's hard to say in order. That's something that we're going to reflect on and see what that priority looks like. We actually go through with our staff and we'll rank those. So, but I always start with the premium positions and see, are we good enough in those, and then move from there.
Matt, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Have you made any staff changes, or do you anticipate any staff changes?
As I said after the game, I'm going to meet with those guys here shortly, each one of them, and we'll evaluate everything as we go. But again, this is the NFL. A lot of things move, a lot of things change, a lot of things adjust. So we'll address that when we get there.
Ryan, Montgomery, I know he's a free agent coming up. Did he do enough this year for you to want to keep him in the fold here?
I've always wanted to keep David. I love his mentality, how he plays the game. I told him that to his face, and it comes from, he's part of the identity that we had this year that kept us competitive. Now, the second part of that is just the contract situation. That's something that we'll see how that goes, and if we can find common ground. I've learned that you can want a player, and the value's got to come together for it to happen. But I love the way that he attacked this season. That's a guy that does everything right. You all watched his tenacity, his fight. I'm a big David Montgomery fan.
You express appreciation for how understanding the fans are in terms of where you are in this process. And that kind of created a bit of a low-pressure situation for this season. Relative to this all season coming up, does it feel like you got a lot of pressure on you, having the resources, having the draft pick? Does that feeling kind of feel a little different going into this offseason than maybe it did last offseason in terms of expectation?
I don't know if that necessarily creates pressure for me. I think I put pressure on myself, and we put pressure on each other to be the absolute best. I think as we go, the plan is to sustain success. So I think that's enough pressure. I don't know if it's the noise and all of that outside the building. I know that we want to be successful, and that's kind of the pressure we put on ourselves. I get the understanding piece. I guess we have a sense of urgency that we move to too. So I don't know if that really moves the needle for me.
When you look at the possibilities in free agency coming up in March, it looked like a good group, middle of the road. I mean, I'm sure you kind of eyeballed who could potentially be out there, understanding some guys probably don't make it to marketplace.
Right. So we went through a first phase with a couple positions to kind of see how it stacked up and eyeballed. We are starting next week where we sit, just same situation as the draft room, where we go position by position. So it's hard to tell right now how deep it is in different areas. But I guess that's something we'll find out here next week when we kind of finish all the way across.
Ryan, you said that Justin needed to get better at the pass game.
Yep.
How do you parse through how much of that is him, how much of that is the players surrounding him, how much of that is the plays he's running, and what specifically can he improve this offseason kind of on his own?
Yeah, so you always start with film. You start with film, and then we'll get together as a staff, especially with Luke, with Janoko, and kind of talk about how to even prioritize where he needs to start to improve. And sometimes I see things, and I'm sure you all see it too, like social media, be like, this is his fault, or that's his fault. And like, it's like 25% right, mostly. But there's some things I need to get from the coaches to understand where exactly and how that play broke down. So we'll get together and kind of address where he needs to start. I know him and Luke sat together and talked about that.
Right, guys, with the feedback you solicited from players in the last couple of days, what's something specific that was brought to your attention that you hadn't thought about that's valuable for you guys as you kind of course correct and figure out some things to do going forward?
No, it was great. It was, really good to sit down and visit with everybody, and it took some time. It was, we opened up and said, hey, let's, anything you can give us to get better at. If it's the training room, the equipment room, if it's the coaching, if it's the facility, whatever it is, relationships, whatever that might be. And it was, let's let them talk. I think it was refreshing for those guys to be able to voice their opinions, especially when both him and I are sitting there. I think that's a pretty cool environment for those guys, and it was great. And so the biggest takeaway from us was that, we did lay foundation, that the locker room was really positive. The energy was always there. The messaging, in terms of the coaching staff, in terms of our team meetings was outstanding. And really we came away with some things to correct. None of the players they don't want to be in pads after Thanksgiving. I said, well, that's too bad. You got to be in pads. But so I said I'll take that under advisement. So that was there was a couple things in there, but really what we can do is just to improve our relationships. And I think it was pretty good, but I think it'll be even better coming up year two. That we built a foundation now with these young guys and the guys that we have currently in the locker room. So it was good.
Ryan,
There's examples in the NFL of teams that have had to kind of turn around from the top of the draft to getting toward contention, but obviously understanding the goal of sustained success in the big picture. What do you want the expectations to be for 2023?
To get better, to continue to bring guys in that we need to win more games. So some of those tight games I want to finish better. And bringing in some more playmakers is going to allow us to do that. So the expectation is to take that next step. I want to stair-step this thing to the top and then stay up there as absolutely long as possible. And you got to be I always go back to making sound decisions. And sometimes when you don't make sound decisions in the short term, it can look really good. But then it's what happens after. So we want to make decisions that can last a long time, so we can stay at the top, have the peak and then the drop-off after.
Ryan, as you saw Justin progress during the season, did you at any point regret that you hadn't put better pieces around him?
No, I thought we used the resources that we had to the best of our ability based on what was there. I think that's kind of what I go back to in terms of making sound decisions. That's hard. I wish it was a perfect scenario where you could just clean up everything and be good. So I thought we made solid, sound decisions to do that. I wish it was perfect across the board to give him so it was clean as much as possible, but it just doesn't always happen that way. But again, now looking at where we can go currently we have flexibility to do a little bit more. Now the second piece is, like Brad said, like what talent's there for us to bring in, and can it help move the needle to help everybody get better?
Ryan,
It was almost like-
Darnell Mooney, can you give us an update on the extent of his injury, timeline, and then just, I know you brought him up last year as a guy you identified. What did you kind of think of what you saw from him before
Yeah,
that?
I love him more than I did when I first walked in the door. I think he's a special human being first and foremost, and a really good football player. I don't know if I have the specific details. I know he's doing really well. Everything's positive. He's headed in the right direction. He's in rehabbing a bunch, so he's in good spirits. He's a guy, too, that in adversity, he's a guy that says, you know, it is what it is. I'm going to control what I can control, and I'm going to come back just as good, if not better, than I was before. So everything's positive with him.
When would he be back on the field, do you think?
You remember the date on that one?
No, I mean, I know it's in the spring, potentially, so we'll, again, it depends on how the rehab goes.
Ryan, the best offenses in the league, the best offenses in the league, and the highest performing quarterbacks, they all have clear-cut number one targets on their offense. Do you think that's necessary in today's league? Do you think that player is in this locker room? And if not, do you think you can secure one this offseason?
Yeah, so that's a lot.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I would start with. There's a lot of questions there. So
You think it's necessary?
I think it's necessary. I think you can have a collection of guys that work really well. I think you can have a tight end mixed in with the group. So collectively, I think you got to have a good group of playmakers. Obviously, you would love a number one. I hope one of these guys on our roster, or if someone's available, can develop into that guy. We'll see. But we're always trying to look for playmakers, and hopefully one of the guys that we have in our locker room now can elevate to that position.
Ryan, I know you said
Last one.
I know you said you weren't paying too close attention to that Houston-Indy game. I'm not sure any of us believe you. But how much more valuable is having that number one against the number two, given how many teams below you need a quarterback?
Yeah, I think any of those positions, you're going to have flexibility, and you can be in a situation where, you can really help your team with moving back. I honestly wasn't paying attention to that. Someone in here saw me who told me about it, and I was like, I just wasn't in the mood for it. I knew just from the loss we were going to be, 1 or 2, and it is what it is, and we'll kind of prepare on that based on where we fell. But yeah, it's the flexibility of being able to do a lot from that spot. But we got to move the needle and get better.